Okay, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Dr. Hephzi Tagoe, and I run Basildon Street Science Festival. So I'm just going to talk through the process, very similar motivation in terms of the talk that we've just heard. So I won't dwell too much on how it all started, but just what I want to focus on really is the evolution of the Basildon Street Science Festival and where we are hoping to go with it next, and really the whole inspiration behind taking science out to our various local communities. And for anyone listening to this presentation, in fact, what's been part of the whole RSB Connect 2021 from yesterday and today, that perhaps if we can do a bit more to just take science out to our local communities. So Basildon Street Science Festival initially started off as a big biology day celebration, and for anyone who has been following the RSB for a while and has been a member of the RSB, you may be familiar with Big Biology Day. It usually happens in October, and it's a week-long celebration of all things biology. And so 2014 was when it was first birthed. And the whole idea again was to take science out to the general public. And based on where I'm located, which is in Basildon in Essex, we're in a place that should be prime for science engagement, but it's not. And so we have very easy commutes into Cambridge and Kent and London. But at the same time, it can be a bit of a chore. So I found for someone who is, what's at the time still is, actively plugged into science engagement, wanting to access science activities, working in the city, whatever city it may have been, whether Cambridge or London, I'd have to finish my working day, be on 45 minutes to an hour commute back into Basildon, and then make my way back to be able to engage in whatever else was going on. And it wasn't always feasible. And so really there was a need, in as much as we had good connectivity to some of the major science hubs around us, there was a need to have something on our doorstep. Because then if I'm actively plugged into science and it's becoming a chore for me to access these science engagements, then we can imagine the rest of the community who may not be actively seeking science. Hence why the initial inspiration to start off Big Biology Day in somewhere closer. So it was a case of, our main city is Chelmsford. So if this is going to work, the best place would be to go to Chelmsford. And so first event, we went to a venue. It's quite well known. They have a science education center as well. It's called the Sanford Mill Museum. And so it's a Marconian museum, and there's a lot of school-based activities that take place at that venue. But so it just seemed like the perfect venue. However, for the first event, yes, it did take 3 months to put it all together, thanks to support from Ian Harvey. He was organizing Big Biology Day in Cambridge at the time. A turnout was super, super, super low. We had such high expectations. Like, we're going to Chelmsford, everyone's going to come out, it's in a big city, it's at the Sanford Mill Museum. And I showed the image on the right-hand side with the big tree in the middle, because that is how beautiful the scenery is. We're like, perfect place. Parking would not be an issue. Everyone's going to love the outdoor space, and it would be crowded. We probably had about 50 people all throughout the day. You know, we kept our enthusiasm up, but it was great. That's 50 people who were actively plugged into science that we engaged that day. And I say 50 people actively plugged into science because what we quickly realized the issue with the venue is that if you're not mobile, it will be hard to access. So public transport does not go to the museum. And so for anyone to actively come out to the Big Biology Day, they had to be actively plugged into science, to then go the extra mile to want to come to the event. So it was great. We had a few exhibitors. Those who did turn up engaged really well. We, of course, had to take on the feedback and make improvements for the following year. So that was our first experience in 2014. So scenario number 2, we then thought, you know what, perhaps if we widen the reach of activities, the range of activities that we put on, so we're actually making use of the outdoor space and not just, come into the museum bound and engage with the science in this room, we're going to get a lot more uptake from the rest of the community. So off we went again the following year to the same venue, and this time we widened the range of activities that we would have to also include more outdoor activities. Numbers were a bit better. I mean, perhaps because it was the second year, so word is going out, but again, it wasn't as great as you would expect for a major city. And of course, the venue that we were looking at, even with the outdoor space, we had a scavenger hunt, which went down really well with those who did attend. But it was time to perhaps revisit the drawing board and just sort of see what needed to be done. Because if we are wanting to go out to the community, and not just those who are actively plugged into science engagement already, then we had to think outside the box and do something different. And so then come year 3, we had scenario number 3. I thought Chelmsford is about half an hour, 20 minutes, half an hour from Basildon itself. So then if the major city is not working really well, we'll go to the next best place, which is Basildon, because I live there, of course. And so we're going to try Basildon instead. Got in touch with the local council, and I should say, along all this process, I mean, everyone that we had conversations with had been super supportive, had been on board, a great idea, let's go for it. And so now come year 3, we come to Basildon, have conversation with the council, and we said, like, this is what we're trying to do, bring quality science experiences to the local communities. We've been in Chelmsford for 2 years, and based on the accessibility of the venue, we think it would be better to use an outdoor space in a location where the target audience that we're trying to reach are already hanging out. And so can we have some space on the town square? And initially, they weren't too sure, because it was the idea that if people are going into town, they're leaving home to go to town for a purpose, and the people want to dash in and dash out. So you just popping out of nowhere with your fancy science gadgets, it's not really going to engage anyone. But we had to make a case, and so we struck a deal and met each other halfway. And so it was a case of, we will, the council do a careers event every year, just to get local businesses set up, and then parents and secondary school kids can come in and meet different industries locally. And so they decided to give a space outside the Town-Gate Theatre where they would normally be having the careers event inside. And so then if parents engage with us outside before they came inside, then we can perhaps make the case for, yeah, people will stop and talk to you if they're going somewhere else. And again, not a huge amount of activities at this time, because it was only on for 2 hours after school, 4:30 to about 6:30, but we had to show proof of concept if we were going to get access to the rest of the town for subsequent years. And it did work really well. Most of the students and the parents who were coming through the outdoor space to access the town gate for that event did stop to interact, and this, you can see some interest in, oh, this is really cool, this is unusual, how can we get more, how can we access more of this? So we'd made a case to return the following year, and then get wider space and be on the square. So at this point, year 3 was when we rebranded from Big Biology Day to Basildon Street Science. And so let's tag on to one event that the people are already attending, and perhaps they would stop and engage with us. So come next year, our first independent, don't tag on to anyone's event, you're on your own, and let's see what engagements is going to be like. So we widened the call, had a lot more people come down this time as exhibitors. It was a windy September, but everything stayed up and no marquees came down. And we had good engagement as well. So over from 2014 up to this point, number of exhibitors are increasing. The audience demographic by now had changed, and the target reach had also changed. So we didn't do any active advertising. We did when we were out in Chelmsford. This time in Basildon, there was no advertising at all. It was the case that we're going to set up, and if you're out and about, stop and talk to us. and it went really well. Again, feedback was great. We had good support both from the council, the exhibitors who came along, and I think we've shown that if you just pop up in a space that people would interact, then they will stop and interact with you. And the following year, this was our most interesting year. By this point, we were starting to get the name out there. We're starting to be a bit more established. We had got a lot more community buy-in. However, as of 2018, probably 95% of the engagement that we had, or the activities that were on display, were from researchers and organizations outside of Essex. We didn't really have any local organizations apart from our local STEM Ambassadors Hub who were a part of this. And really, we wanted it to be, something local, with local people involved. And Basildon has a rich industry and engineering history, so there's a lot of industry type companies who could be a part of it. At this point, we didn't really have a lot of buy-in from as many locals as we would like. We did send a lot of invitations, half of them, no one responded, but at least our community leaders were in full support and they were there. And we now had moved away from just biology to the wider STEM. And so we had a tech hub and still very biology and chemistry biased. And engagements were so amazing. We had a lot of young people come on as volunteers, and feedback, which I'll share at the end, from the wider community. We had a lot of people saying to us, oh, so, after today, what next? How can we access a lot more engagement? Which then got us thinking, well, they do have a point, so it's all good and well taking science out to our local communities, but then after that one exposure, what next? And this is some of the things that we have been thinking about throughout the process. 2019 was today, the last event that we have had, because of course everything has shut down since. But again, the diversity, the number of organizations that were now getting involved, this time we had a lot more locals take part as well, which is what we really wanted once we came into Basildon. People were there for hours and hours and hours, and we did try to time how long the average attendee would engage at a stand, but really lost track after a while. And the other thing as well, the first image on the left-hand side, we can see it's got the Rotary Club of Basildon, and so we're now bringing out a lot more local organizations who could be involved in this and get the community to really own the Basildon Street Science Festival going forward. So just sharing a little bit of the feedback that had come through from when we progressed 2017, 18, 19. And this is my favorite one, with the purple one on the right hand bottom corner, where it says finally something educational in Basildon. Hey. But yeah, there really isn't much that goes on in Basildon at all. And so that was really inspiring to see. So this is why we're trying to bring science out to the community, because really it's not just school-age children that we're trying to reach. It should be the parents, that there are adults without children, and so if your child is not at school, then where are you then accessing your science? And if people are plugged in and engaged and connected with science on a daily basis, perhaps when we have things like the current pandemic, it will not be so hard to just communicate the need for vaccines and everything else to the general public. And so it's been really great. We haven't returned since 2019, but we should be back next year, fingers crossed. If we survive the winter, I think we'll be good to go. And best science lesson ever, this is another great one. And I just love this photo so much, because really, if not for the Royal Society of Biology, Basildon Street Science would never have started at all in the first place. And so we do all them a lot. I think I may have dropped up a little bit there. Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yes, okay. This is my last slide. So just when I was singing on the praises for the RSB, but yeah, what we're saying is, how can we utilize the lessons learned to enhance outreach and engagement work for the future. And in the case of Basildon Street Science Festival, really the evolution of that journey, the main lessons we've learned from that is really we need to listen as we're going along. In as much as we're plugged into the science, we want to bring everyone else along for whatever our reasons may be. It's important that we are listening to what those who are involved, or those who are trying to engage are saying, then make improvements to the provisions that we are delivering to that those target audiences, and really just so we can maximize impacts and really, engage the audience that we're trying to engage with. And that has really been our journey and our story, just making improvements as we go along, to then realize that it's not about bringing the people to the science, but taking the science to the people in spaces where they feel at home. So thank you very much. That is me for now. And if you do want to visit us, there we go, basildonstreetscience.co.uk. And of course, it's my plug. So everyone follow me on Twitter and Instagram and everywhere else. Yeah.